Good evening, everyone. Here we are, Sunday evening, where I'm at, and this is the weekly recap of the news. I heard from a number of you, and it seems like the majority of you want to hear this. So, hey, here we go. All right, our first story this one's from the Waking Times. And the reason why I'm doing this is that today, there's so many mixed signals. In the United States, diabetes is now becoming the #1 disease amongst the population. And of course, diabetes, it's just a train wreck after that. And particularly here in the United States, now I know that, I actually did a video on this about obesity and how it is now, the #1 killer. And the problem that we have here is that we have this disconnect that we're told to eat healthy, right? But how many of us grow our own food? And in fact, if you live in the inner cities, particularly in a much more cosmopolitan environment, New York probably has the best suited. I mean, every time I visit there, you really don't have to go eat in the restaurants because there's enough eateries where there's enough of the small mom and pops that actually make good food. But here's the problem. Outside of that, everything that most people consume is processed. Thus, you got the problem. So in this story here, surprise, surprise, right? Like, who didn't expect to see this coming? So, our little pretty colored bags here. You got the blue one, you got the yellow one, and you got the red one. It's almost like I got the blue packet, which is my blue pill. I got my yellow packet. You see what I'm saying? Well, what they have found now is that these artificial sweeteners, because, sugar is somehow wrong, and it's not that sugar is wrong. The problem is that it's everywhere in the food chain. I mean, that's what processed foods are. And now you got such things as aspartame, saccharin, sucralose. I mean, folks, these are all chemicals. They really are. And are we surprised that when we put it into this advanced, highly developed machine called our bodies, we're somehow surprised, right? So anyway, folks, not sure what you do. I use stevia only because when I reached there, I guess it must be at least 10 years ago when I first got turned on to it and actually grow it. So it's a great sweetener substitute. So check it out. All right, we got our next story here. It's from the technologyreview.com. Now, it's not so much that the Verily robot will raise 20 million sterile mosquitoes to release in California. Okay, they're doing that down in places like in Florida. A lot of genetic manipulation going on there with mosquitoes. But what caught my story here, folks, is this. This company, Verily Robot, is an arm of Alphabet, who is Google. So this is Alphabet's life science arm. And what really got me, number one, we are in the era now where genetic manipulation is becoming commonplace, and it's going to become more and more commonplace. And as we begin to see the large data tech companies, they now see where the bioscience companies have struggled. Well, now you have the tech companies coming in, buying up the biotech companies and now incorporated it into their business models. So I just want to make you aware of this, that when you have companies like Google now that they're getting into much more of the life sciences, it begins to make you think that, okay, they monopolize the data, right? I mean, anyone who doesn't think that Google isn't the modern day God for the platform of all knowledge, you really have to be pretty much off the grid, huh? Because it is. It's everywhere. And now they're getting into life sciences. And, oh yeah, they're also involved in a little thing called AI. We'll talk a little bit about that. So anyway, folks, great story in here. Read this because it's not just, like I said, the genetic modification, which is problematic. I mean, I asked the question, how well did the GMOs work out for us, right? What do we think this is going to work out for us? The GMOs haven't turned out to be exactly what we were told. But anyway, folks, great story. I'll leave the link. All right, our next story is from the Daily Sheeple. So the Chechnya leader here over in Russia claims that the Russian doomsday device is activated. And apparently this is a carryover from the 80s Cold War, that there is this weapon that Russia developed that in the event of nuclear annihilation, that their system, which you could almost say was an advanced form of AI, right, would automatically blast off all of their missiles. And there we have the mad scenario. Now, how much credibility? Who knows? You know, it's just something that you have to look at. It's interesting because this is a lot of the Cold War rhetoric. And I find it interesting that that rhetoric is now beginning to somehow find itself into the daily talking points. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Cold War never did ended. It's just took on another name called the War on Terrorism. Who knows? But anyway, worth the read. Who knows, right? All right, our next story here is from the Mother Nature Network. And this one, I find these stories interesting because here's the thing, folks. Our technology is getting better. And we are now able to see things that the previous generations never had a chance to. Case in point, there is a Tuesday night on the Science Channel. It's the uncovering, where they take a city and they literally uncover it. Well, with the technology today, with the laser technology, scanning technologies, what they are finding is that the hieroglyphs that we see that are thousands and thousands of years old, they're finding that there was another story behind that. Now, why I bring that up? Well, because none of us know our history. Now, as our technology gets better, as we're able to see deeper into the ground, as we're able to uncover that which nature seems to be at all times doing, and that is erasing history, I think we're going to find out that A, we are going to be much older than what right now in the collective human consciousness, there is this undercurrent that we're somehow less than 10,000 years old. It's preposterous. It just is. And as we begin to find more and more the geological record, we begin to find out that what we have been taught is not correct. Folks, there's good evidence that something hit our planet, at least we know once, of a nuclear war. I mean, the evidence is there. And if you think that that was somehow about 24 to 27,000 years ago, then you have to begin to ask yourself, if that happened, then what caused that? Asteroid? No, I don't think so. I think there was literally a nuclear war. But anyway, good article, because it continues to validate the human species is a species with amnesia. And the more that you begin to realize this, as these new discoveries begin to be brought forth, we're going to begin to have a much better understanding of who we are as a species. All right, this is my next story here. I really like this. This website, messagetotheeagle.com, is a great website, folks. So this one here is about death is just an illusion. We continue to live in a parallel universe. And I got to tell you, this is a fascinating story. And to give it to you kind of in a quick summation is this. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's on a constant state of change. Each one of us are 20 watts of energy. So because the biomass, which is really that electrical signal that each of us generate, that still escapes medical science, that when you die, those synaptic pathways that break down, that energy is transferred. Kind of weird. And you could really start getting into a lot more of this, but check out Robert Lanza. That's all I can say. Seriously, check him out. I'm going to be doing a whole video on him because this is quite fascinating. And here it is right there. Who am I? Just 20 watts, a fountain of energy operating in the brain. But this energy doesn't go away at death. One of the surest axioms of science is that energy never dies. It can neither be created nor destroyed. This energy can transcend from one world to another. And I'm telling you, I'm reading this great book right now. It's really into quantum physics. And I am no physicist. Will never even say that I even want to think that I'm close to one. But this book that I'm reading is a good book for a layman like myself, that I can begin to comprehend the theories and the models that is quantum mechanics, quantum theory, and how that begins to relate into the physical world. Now, I'm not going to get into it here because you have to have some build-up to understand this point. But when you start looking at photons and you begin to look at particles and waveforms, that each of us, when you think about it right now as I'm talking, all of our bodies are being permeated with hundreds of billions of neutrinos, subatomic particles, that they say were from the Big Bang. But here's the problem with the Big Bang. How can you create energy out of nothing? Because in essence, that's what the Big Bang theory is. That somehow or another energy was created out of nothing, and that all of this energy, by the way, was dispersed at just the right temperature, at the right speed, at the right time. I mean, you begin to set up all the rights. I mean, you're looking at, 10-pin bowling pins that, no matter where you're going to throw the ball, they're all going to fall down. So, great article. It's a great article, particularly, if those of, listen, I was talking to someone this morning who had a real fear of death. He confided in me and he said, Wayne, I have this fear of death. And I talked to him. I said, what are you afraid of? He says, I'm afraid that I'm going to stop. And I said, all of us have that fear. But when I explained to him this theory, particularly biocentrism, and how that you begin to look at this on a quantum level, and then you bring it up to a cellular level, I said, listen, when those synaptic pathways begin to fire, as the cohesion begins to break down, I said, they're firing. I said, it's theorized that that's the transference of energy. Think about that. All right, great story here. Moving on along. So another one from the same website, unknown signals picked up near a red star, dwarf star, Ross 128. And by the way, this one's really close in the neighborhood, 11 light years away. So again, we're still finding more and more mysteries about the universe and even our little neck of the woods here that we're discovering more and more. I just read yesterday, another set of radio signals have come in, and they're baffling. Even SETI is in on it. They now know that it does not appear with a great certainty to be natural. It appears to be artificial. Now, how they determine that, I don't know. But they've been at this a while, so they would know. Maybe they're getting, Contact. A great movie, by the way. And here's one of the signals that they're actually looking at. You can see something's going on. So I'll leave the link on this one as well. Okay. Now I'm going to do this story because I think this is an important story to talk about. I know a number of veterans who I am in touch with right now that are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I can say this about cannabis. It does appear to have evidence that it does reduce the anxiety and the stress. Now, I know I have a couple that I'm actually talking to that were actually, in one case, was prescribed medical marijuana. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, that although it's not legally federally within the FDA, your doctor can and has been able to write a prescription for marijuana. It's just a fact. Now, there seems to be this, I don't know, I would almost say penalizing the men and women who have served to protect us all here in the United States. And by the way, I think that in case they're also doing this for the world to a greater degree. And I personally don't see any problem that if a person, a human, vet or not, finds that they can find relief from this clinically diagnosable disorder. This is not some pseudo, disorder. This has actually been, we now know it actually exists, and exists in many different forms. So what I'd like to begin to bring out to this point, I think that if you would begin, depending on where you stand on this, now I don't find a problem with it. Listen, I think that the FDA should be doing much, much more research into this natural substance coming from the hemp plant. Now, there's well-documented evidence that the reason why they don't is that because Big Pharma hasn't figured out how to get its slimy hands all over it. Now, I don't know if you know this, but starting in August in Canada, it will now become legal as a matter of national policy. I happen to think that the United States is heading in the same direction. If for nothing else, because of the tax benefits coming in. We got to find places for revenue. And no matter what they try to stance in this administration or whatever, I think the inevitability. So here's the thing. I'd like for those of you who, number one, are veterans, who happen to believe that there is legitimacy to this type of treatment. Listen, what is wrong with taking a natural substance that hasn't been screwed with, altered genetically, and then synthesized down? The stuff that's out there that they've done the synthesizing on doesn't do people, it's terrible. I mean, listen, all these other type of, look at all these. These are all antidepressants, anti-anxieties. All of these have a list of side effects a mile long. The least of which, and the number one, is suicide. You know, it's a hell of a thing that you go out there, you fight on the battlefield, you come back home, you think that you know you're going to be cared for, and you're trying to adapt yourself and cope back into society, and you need a mechanism to do that, and then what they prescribe to you just makes you want to go and blow your freaking brains out. And let me tell you what, there's a lot of exposure as well, our servicemen have, into a lot of chemicals that ordinary citizens don't have. And a lot of them have disorders that they're in all the time pain. Listen, I'm one who suffers from fibromyalgia. That was given to me by the little side effect from a tick. And also a little bacterial meningitis. And, you know, when you're living with pain, listen, many women have lower back pain, those particularly that have given childbirth. You know, the point is that if there is a substance, and if you have a choice of substance, I would probably want to take the one that has the least side effects, right? So we ought to call our congressman, tell them to start an initiative within the VA that begins to look at the exception and begin to look at the medical studies done. You know why there's not that many medical studies done? Again, they want it to be suppressed, and the ones that you hear are paid by and by Big Pharma. That I'll tell you something. So that's my commentary on that, folks. All right, moving on. So, real quick, Elon Musk, this is from The Guardian, constantly out there telling us, folks, AI, either we start getting wrapped around and doing standards on this, or this thing could be an existential threat to our survival. I'll leave it at that. I find this one here on the Event Chronicle pretty cool. This one here talks about they have identified 219 potential habitable worlds. NASA has already located 10 Earth twins. And I find it really interesting on this, and they go and they list out the planets, who they are, and how big they are, and what they are. But folks, my whole point to this article here is this. We're finding more and more planets that appear from all the data coming in that this is, in fact, more potential livable worlds closer to us than we think. Now, it's always been that conundrum how we can see these other stars that are, 10, 15, 20, 100 light years away. And when I said 20, I need to retract that because 11 light years is very close. And if you look at where some of the breakthroughs are now coming through in physics on time and travel, particularly the transmission of knowledge, who knows? Quick more stories here. This one I found interesting. So this one is on Gizmodo.com. And, well, they have sent more robots into a Harry Carey mission. Every one that they have been sitting in there, they can't get it that far in. The radiation is just too intense. Well, apparently they got one who apparently got through the last gatekeeper. And, of course, the thing died. But it was able to send a picture back. They say they think they found some of the spent fuel rods, which is really what they're looking for. They can't find them. They find parts, but a lot of it's just gone. Well, on this one here, and it kind of shows you I do not read Chinese, I mean, excuse me, Japanese. So those who do, you probably can get the gist of the story better than we can. But this is what I really found was interesting. It says, never before have we taken such clear pictures of what could be melted fuel. This is from the power company there. We believe that the fuel melted and mixed with the metal directly underneath it and is likely, highly likely to be filmed. That's what they filmed on Friday. Now, folks, the radiation of this thing is still, it's just off the charts. I mean, there you can go, 660 sieverts. 80, you're dead. Dead. That's just it. You're gone. So, again, do we have the China syndrome here? I say yes, we do. I still say that they're still suppressing, I think, how really bad it really is. But who knows? I like this one here. It says right here, the robot from Toshiba, by the way, which is similar to design to the submarine, managed to gain some glimpse of a hardened black, gray, and orange substance pulled below reactor number 3. I don't know. Just think about that. Let that imagery soak in. All right, the last one I want to do for everyone here. Did you hear about today the big CME, the death shot that is heading for Mars? So this is really cool, folks. I'm going to run it through real time and then kind of take the last 4 minutes of this video so you can really see what a kill shot will do. Now, we don't know what's going to happen to Mars, but Mars is in the kill zone. This will be interesting. So check this out, folks. There it is. Now, what I'm going to do for you so you can really begin to see the impact of this, I've slowed this down by 60%. And watch this. I mean, this is a huge, by the way, this sunspot group that caused this was last week looking right at us. So look at that, folks. That's what a kill shot looks like. If that ever happens to us, you best, now I want to show you something here. I want you to see how the camera really picks up the radiation blast right there. So you can see that the shock wave is ahead of the coronal mass ejection. And the camera here, again, this camera just gets pounded, but you can see the intensity of this CME and how it just bombarded this. And look here, folks. You can really see how much of the ejecta was kicked out from that sunspot group. And by the way, it'll be back around here in about 14 days. Well, look at that. I'll just try to slow it down for you can see. So what we have here is really, I hadn't noticed this before, but we actually have a double blast. You have the first ejecta here, and then the main core here. And look at that. You can just see the intensity. Look at that. Then we have another one coming. So that's 3. Look at, folks. It looks like there's even more. There is. Look at that. This was much more intense than I even realized. I wonder if Ben will catch this. Look at that. Folks, and we're going to get some of this. I mean, this is the kill shot is behind us. This is all going away from us. This is what we have to be concerned, and it was large enough that we'll get some of the I would call the splash. There you go. All right, folks. Well, I hope this has been fun for you. All right. We'll see you again next Sunday night. Have a great week. And remember, be kind to one another. We'll talk soon.